let's get started. Are we good to go, staff?
As ready as we're gonna be.
So who's our driver then, for sure?
I'll be driving.
Looks like one of our board members is enjoying Wyoming.
Afternoon, y'all.
Okay. Well, I want to welcome everyone to our special board meeting. We've got a couple items of business today. Want to welcome the public also that's joining us and all the staff. We've got a couple items on our agenda before we get going.
Recording in progress.
Well, there we go. We got it recording. So I thought that was already up and going. Okay, let's get started. With a roll call vote, or not vote, roll call. So you guys will check your mics, make sure you can be heard on these as we go through. Member Straight.
Here.
Member Norton. Well, we see you, Member Norton, but we're not hearing you. Okay, got a thumbs up. She's here. Member Moss.
I'm really here now.
Here. I'm here.
All right, there you go. Member Lear.
Here.
Okay. Member Hymas.
Here.
Member Hutchings.
I'm here.
Member Hart.
She might not make it, Chair.
Okay. Thank you. Member Hanson.
Yes, good afternoon.
Afternoon. Member Earl.
Yes.
Vice Chair Davis.
Hello, Chair.
Hello, hello. Member Klein.
Here.
Member Cannon.
Good afternoon.
And then Member Booth.
I'm here.
Vice Chair Belknap.
Yes, sir.
And Mark Hunt's chair is here, so we have 14. And somebody let me know if Molly's able to join us. As authorized by Utah Code 52-4, this meeting is being held electronically without an anchor location for safety reasons due to the construction at the location where the public body would normally meet. Okay, with that said, also we've been receiving, there won't be any oral public comment on this special board meeting, but we've been receiving and will continue to receive comment through board@schools.utah.gov or public comments at school.utah.gov. So we appreciate the written comments that we've been receiving. To manage expectations this day, we have two items of business. One came out of Finance Committee. It's regarding R277-726. And the second item is our library materials model policy. So there was a little bit of confusion on not our start time, but finish time. Some board members thought this meeting was going to end at 3. According to our agenda, it's going to has a potential of going until 3:30. So hopefully we can get our work done by then. And board members, I apologize for that confusion earlier on, whether it was a 2 or 2.5 hour meeting. So with that, times are our enemy here. We put this off for 3 weeks, posting or wait, to make sure that you and others had an opportunity to digest our AAG's our AAG letter that we received the Thursday night of our last, I think it was Thursday night, might have been Wednesday night, for our last board meeting. So we so we could use that and helping and assisting us with our library's material model policy. So I'm excited for the work that's going to happen this day. First item of business is item number 2, Finance Committee recommendation regarding R277-726 statewide online education program. And I'm not getting back into civic clerk. I'm trying to do that on the side. So whatever motions that we have, whoever's driving will need to make sure they get posted up here. Hopefully others aren't having that same challenge. Seeing if I can get in. So, Ben Rasmussen, Director of Law and Professional Practices, are you going to take point on this, or is it Corey?
I'll be happy to start things off, Chair, if that's all right.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Ben Rasmussen, Director of Law and Professional Practices. The first item is a follow-up to a Finance Committee item from May. In the May Finance Committee, the committee approved draft 1 of our SOEP rule amendments, R277-726. During the board discussion in the earlier June board meeting, there was some concern as far as the follow-up with superintendents and the funding that goes for the SOE program there. So after follow-up with the superintendents by the SOEP staff, we have a new draft for the board to consider. Draft 3 has 2 significant changes over what the board has had before. The first change is on that you'll want to see is on line 561 through 571.
Ben, we're not seeing that. It flashed and disappeared. And
let's see. I'm not driving. I'm not sure who is.
Because I'm still trying to get into civic clerk.
Civic clerk has
Just
an
give
issue.
me one moment, Chair. I'll get that up for you.
All right. Thank you, Kelsey.
So she's getting that up. I'll just point out that 561 through 571 is the new proposed formula for distributions for funding to smaller schools. And this was what staff came up with after going and meeting with the superintendents at their summer meeting. The proposal is that there would be a different formula for with a base for schools with less than 1,000 students, and then if there's remaining funds, there's then the superintendent can distribute additional money based on the school's population. So that's on lines 561 through 571 if you pull up draft 3, Kelsey. The other significant change to the rule, you want draft 3. The other significant change to the rule you'll see on lines 470 through 482. This is actually language that was approved by the board in a previous draft, but in the course of making changes to the rule, this was omitted as an incorrect draft was used. So staff is asking the board to reinsert this language that was previously approved by the board there on 470 through 42. So those are the major changes between the drafts that the committee approved and that the board has for consideration today. Corey Conth is online. I believe Jennifer Thronson too, who can answer any questions the board has about these changes and the new amendments to the rule.
So let's get a motion on the table, and I'm not accessing civic clerk. So Vice Chair Norton from the Finance Committee, your hand is raised.
Yes, I wanted to make a motion.
Okay.
I move that the board approve R277-726 draft 3 on second and final reading.
I second it. Board Member Booth.
Okay. Okay, we have a motion and a second. Discussion to the motion. Vice Chair Norton, did you want to?
Yes. I appreciate that. Excuse me. the work that staff has done in working with the superintendents and ironing out some of these issues that we've had with rural schools and the funding and just the contracts going forward. I think they really stepped in to try to solve this. We still have work to do. Probably will have to happen through policy, but I think we've got something we can work with now.
Okay. We have a motion on the table, discussion to the motion. Member Hutchings, I had you second, and then your hand is down. So, Member Lear.
Thanks. Can you put the rule up again, Ben? Because I don't have my, I don't have two screens. My question is regarding the certainty. This is an issue that has been frustrating me for going on 2 years, that I feel like schools are being taken advantage of in the desire for some to frankly promote online courses, which yes are really, really helpful for some students, but not necessarily what a school wants and can afford. So I need to see the rule though to tell you where I have a question. Can you put that up again? Somebody who's driving.
Elsie, could you find draft 3? Thank you.
Got it. I'm uncertain on line 417. When it says a provider utilizing 470, I misspoke. 470, a provider utilizing a third party shall establish contractual and procedural safeguards. And then are the ABC, are those the procedural safeguards? And then what guarantees, what procedures does the USBE have in place to see that this happens? So that it's not just a rule statement without any follow-up or backup to protect both the USBE's money, our taxpayer money, and then schools.
So how many questions did you have in that?
What is the, what protections does the
Okay, that's what I, okay.
SOEP plan to, what procedures does the sorry, mixing up my acronyms, does SOEP plan to use to make this so? I feel like it's the concern or the rule or the procedure is without substance unless you tell me what you're going to do. Are you going to audit them? Tell me.
Let's find out. So maybe this is a question, our SOEP specialist, Corey Nath, are you on? Would that be, are you on? Ben, do you see
Dr. Kunt is on.
I was not unmuted. Do I have permission to answer?
Yes.
Okay.
I see ya.
Thank you. Okay, so there are two parts to 470 to 482. There are two safeguards there. One is for USBE, and our safeguard is that if we do not issue a notice of enrollment, that course enrollment is not funded, period. What we were trying to establish here was an additional safeguard for our providers that are working with vendors, because we had in the past had a very small district working with a provider where the vendor was giving access to coursework before proper approvals went through, and we wanted to ensure that financial responsibility didn't accrue to that LEA, that if an error was made, that financial responsibility really settled with the vendor. They lost the money, period. So that is what is laid out in here. And so we required that they have that our providers have contractual provisions in place such that their vendors have no right to open a class to a student until the actual agent of USBE, which is that provider, has said, yes, we've received a notice of enrollment. You now have authority to go forward.
Okay, do you have a follow-up, Member Lear?
I do, just quickly. So you'll be auditing those contracts between the providers?
We do. We work with our providers to overlook those contracts and review those contracts at the inception of the contract to ensure that they have these provisions in place.
And that it actually happens the way that it's described. Is that right?
Yes, exactly.
Helpful. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Vice Chair Belknap.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I want to go up to the other section that I don't know what lines it was. I can't pull up my civic clerk.
It's in the 500, so you need to go down.
Is it 561? Sorry, Kelsey. This little small rule. Okay, so I'm kind of struggling here because I'm trying to figure out how we are actually going to distribute the funding to these rural schools in a situation where they maybe have all their kids want to take one. And then what happens to the other schools who don't have an opportunity in our small schools?
Well, and
process.
Oh, may I answer?
Yes, please, Corey.
Thank you.
And for the public that's listening, Corey, you just state your name and your title.
Oh, sorry.
They don't know who's saying what. Okay.
Thank you so much. My name is Dr. Corey Konth, and I'm the statewide online education program specialist for Utah State Board of Education. The plan essentially is that each school, each eligible small school, so it's 999 students or less, will be guaranteed that the cost of one course will be covered. Other than that, we are on a first come, first serve basis, except that if we find at a certain point after March 1st that there are remaining funds to distribute, then they will be based on school population, and we'll divide those with respect to qualifying district and qualifying charter schools. And then it's still on a first come, first served basis after that. Essentially, we have determined that the amount of funding is much smaller than we believe demand will be. And so this is what the LEA superintendent settled upon when working with Dr. Thronson. They felt this was the fairest scheme at this point in time that we could work out. But we will be addressing this need, what we perceive to be a need for additional funding, in our business case, or one of the business cases that will be put before the board, and you will have that to consider.
You have a follow-up?
I do, Chair. So I don't think there's going to be any funds left. So, but I'm wondering how every one of these students can take a course from a provider when I think the average, I think we got like 610,000, and there's approximately 6,100 students who are in these small schools. How are they going to all get one course?
That's a good question. This is the scheme we agreed upon after speaking with the superintendents, but I think, here's some additional knowledge that might help here. We were originally thinking about a population of just above 61,000 students because we were considering 7th through 12th graders. But when we pare that down to eligible students for this allocation, 9th to 12th graders, we have just over 38,000 students and an allocation of $681,600. So we'll be able to cover the one course per student. And then, as you say, I don't think much else will be left.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that clarity, Corey.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next, Member Earl.
Yes, I've got to go back and find it on the document, but I think somewhere in here it talked about equity. I just want to know what that's referring to, if that's referring to rural versus a more populated area, or larger school districts, or charter versus what is our equity referring to? Let me see if I can pull it back up. I just went off of it. In other words, is there a specific distribution that we're looking for in the equity here?
Chair, may I?
Yes.
Go ahead.
I think, Member Earl, if you look on line 553, we had used that in the prior proposed language.
Oh, okay.
But that particular part was deleted. I'm not sure if there's somewhere else that you're referring to.
No, that I just wanted it spelled out what that's looking at, but if it's not in there, then and maybe that's because I was looking at the previous, I didn't look at draft 3. Is that what we're on?
Yes, draft 3.
Oh, okay. It nullifies my question. Thanks.
Okay, Member Straight.
His hand is down, Chair.
Okay. Vice Chair Davis.
Thanks. So these are the proposals from the working group, correct?
Oh, may I answer?
Yes.
Thank you. So this is, again, Corey Kahn, statewide online education program specialist. The summer retreat of school district superintendents met and conferred with USBE, and this was the outcome of that back and forth.
Does that answer your question, Vice Chair Davis?
Okay, so yeah, it wasn't the working group necessarily that we put together. It was a group of superintendents want all of these things.
Yes, yes. In fact, and I'm sorry to keep answering without asking again for permission.
No, you're good. You're still in the conversation. You're good.
Okay, thank you. Yes, our working group had a different idea, and that idea was not something that the group of all the superintendents together at that summer retreat supported. So in consultation with Dr. Thronson, they developed a different plan, and you see that here. We still have an upcoming meeting next week with our rural superintendents at URSA. So we will still be working on this, but this puts a program in place so that, or puts a plan in place so that we can at least begin working on this and have a rule that includes this, concurrent enrollment, so forth, and we can get going. And then we assumed that any additional amendments which needed to be made or which were suggested by specifically rural superintendents might be made. And the rural superintendents, those very small schools, also include charter schools. So their interests are fairly similar in that they both lack economies of scale and things like that. So that's a group we are very excited to hear from.
Okay. I'm not seeing any of their hands raised. We do have a motion on the table, and before I state it and we vote, I do want to thank staff for responding to the request that came out of Finance Committee to try to bring these betterments forward aggressively, and so we can get this out in a timely manner. So thank you. The motion before the board members, if you'll be prepared to vote, is that the board approve R277-726 draft 3 on second and final reading.
Draft 3, Chair.
Oh, what did I say?
6.
Let me restate the motion. Thank you. The motion for the board is the board approve R277-726 draft 3 on second and final reading. Did I say it correctly? Good.
Yes, yes.
Board members at this time, please vote.
This is Board Member Klein. I'm going to abstain.
You'll need to read all
I
the
need to do a
votes.
roll call.
Yeah, you'll have to do all the votes then.
Yeah, all of the voting
Okay.
has to go roll call. Member Straight,
Yes.
Member Norton,
Yes.
Member Moss,
Yes.
Member Lear,
Yes.
Member Hymas,
Yes.
Member Hutchings,
Yes.
Member Hart,
Not here.
still not here. I'll take that one out. Member Hanson,
Yes.
Member Earl,
Yes.
Vice Chair Davis,
Yes.
Member Klein, you'll just restate it again.
Abstain.
Abstain. Member Cannon,
Yes.
Member Booth,
Yes.
Vice Chair Belknap.
Yes.
Okay, the motion passes with one abstain. Natalie, Member Klein, did you get that, Sybil?
Yes, thank you.
Member Klein, your hand's raised. Is that for a reason, or is that just something from before?
Just for the next item.
Okay. Okay, that motion passes. All right, next on our agenda, we have our model policy for the library materials model policy. Member Klein.
Yes, I'd like to make a motion that the board adopt Member Klein's sensitive materials model policy in anticipation of a state board rule specific to sensitive materials, which shall implement this model policy in compliance with Utah Code 53G 10-103 and the Attorney General Memorandum laws surrounding school libraries.
Okay, we have a motion, and hopefully it might be submitted early and we can get on our screen. I can't pull it up. I can't access Civic Clerk. Do we have a second?
Reread it. Does someone have a copy of that? Board Member Klein, does someone have a copy of that?
No, sorry.
Well, we're still, well, I'm not getting a second.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. You want to speak to your motion, Member Klein?
Yes, I would just repeating what I already said. Wanted to put this forward with the purpose in mind, and a lot of the language is right there in the purpose in front of you of what I just stated down to the purpose section. My motion comes from that the state board adopt this model policy in anticipation of the state board rule specific to sensitive materials, which shall implement this model policy in compliance with 53G 10-103 and Utah Attorney General official memorandum laws surrounding school libraries. According to the Attorney General, this will help protect the LEAs from potential lawsuits, or I've written it in order to follow that guidance from the Attorney General to help protect the LEAs from potential lawsuits brought by parents or groups alleging that the school failed to comply with state laws. I'm happy to answer any questions that anybody has with this model policy. I sent in a letter to the board along with the draft giving some of the main points, what this model policy would do. It consolidates the complaint system into a single system for reporting on sensitive materials throughout the state, making it so our board takes on that heavy lifting so that we don't have 42 plus LEAs out there creating different policies that open up HB 374 to 42 plus different interpretations of the law, making it easier for our Attorney General, should a lawsuit come, to defend the law, being that it's being consistently applied across the state. Also, it provides equal protection under the law for all children, protecting them from being exposed to material harmful to minors. It keeps a consistent bright line standard for the definition of pornography, what meets that definition, as opposed to the other policy that has a lot of ambiguity in it that allows for multiple different interpretations, again, which would make it hard to defend in the case of a lawsuit. So it also provides the checks and balances needed at each level, from the school level to the district level to the USPE level, while the tracker system, the electronic tracker, would make it so that both or all of us as board members, as well as district school boards and administrators, as well as the legislature, can see in real time what's going on. So they don't have to wait until November to find out how it's working. They can see right up front how it's working at any given time, and it provides that transparency and accountability that is currently lacking, so that parents can have the assurance that their concerns will be taken care of, instead of the game that we're currently playing, where everyone's afraid to take action. Nobody knows who has the final responsibility to act, and there's a lot of ambiguity and a lot of fear in acting, for fear they'll get it wrong. So this policy tries to streamline that process and make it very clear, so that we're all on the same page as to what counts as sensitive material and what does not. It focuses on what HB 374 was created for, and that is what we're trying to keep out, not what we're trying to include. It shouldn't be a comprehensive policy as far as things that should be out and things that we want in our schools. This is specific to what should not be in our schools according to Utah code. And so I would just ask the board consider adopting this, so that we can allow schools to start cleaning up their libraries and all the other sensitive materials that are in the school, in whatever form they may be, or wherever in the school they may be, so that we can get our schools ready for the kids to come back, so that we're protecting the students. And that way, we don't have to have all the districts trying to come up with their own system to track this, and wasting time with how to do that, instead of just starting to clean out the things that don't belong. So thank you. I appreciate your consideration.
Okay. We got a couple hands raised. The proposed motion is getting put on the screen, but I'll go to the other board members that have questions during this discussion portion. And then Member Klein, if you can make sure that's how your motion was close, well, how it was stated. So we'll go to Member Hymas.
Thank you, Chair. So I'm going to speak against this motion I see what Member Klein is wanting to do here. But I see that this is more of a hybrid of a rule and a policy put together. And I understand that she expresses concern for the LEAs having to kind of fumble around or look for guidance. And I think there's a better way. In fact, I'll make a substitute motion that hopefully can provide that better way that was based off of what Member Klein a lot of what Member Klein is presenting today. But I do want to remind the board that we did approve a rule saying that LEAs would take this on, that this would be their responsibility, but that we would support them in this responsibility. So I'd like to, with that, Chair, if I can, make a substitute motion. Is that acceptable?
Yes.
So I would like to move that the board approves the library materials model policy merged master. But I do have a couple of amendments, and I don't know how to do that because here we keep going down this vortex, right? So perhaps I could get some procedural help on this, on how I would make an amendment on within the amendment that I'm making on the document.
So usually when you're with a substitute motion, it's just what it is. It's a substitute, and you have a substitute ready to place into this motion if there's a second, and if there's a second.
Second.
Let me
part of that discussion. So
That's a second, Chair.
okay. So, but before I want to understand the motion before I get the second. So, and Member Hymas has the master merge draft model policy as a substitute. If you've got additional amendments to that merge draft model policy, then we've got to get this policy in as a substitute, and then further amendments can take place.
Okay, so we need to take a vote before we can start manipulating either.
Yeah, but it's not on the table until the substitute is placed on the table.
Okay. My substitute motion then is as Angie has written it, I believe. I can't see that the board approves the master merged draft model policy.
So, and as we're walking through this, our parliamentarian Sybil, if you'll track this, and also the vice chairs to make sure you keep me in all of these motions and that in alignment.
Point of order, Chair.
Yes.
Can Board Member Hymas at this point also put in the changes he'd like in this model draft policy right now as part of the amendment or the part of his motion?
However this policy is written, and it's in civic clerk.
Okay.
That body has to get placed on the table.
Thank you, Chair.
It can't be like he could have taken board
Point of order.
hang on a sec, let me finish. Could have taken the master merge draft policy and had the amendments in place, but you have to place something on a substitute. You've got to know what that substitute is in advance. Well, not in advance, as you're approving that substitute. So who hollered point of order? I didn't.
I did. The point of order or
Yes.
point of clarification. My motion, it's worded slightly off, but it's misunderstood. My motion needs a rule specific. Well, we need a rule specific to 53G10-103.
Oh.
The existing rule on the library materials doesn't address the Utah code with enough specificity So my motion is a motion to adopt this or my model policy and pass a future rule to implement my model policy.
Or bring a future rule. You want to turn it to rules. That's what's in it. So you're not passing one.
Yeah, my model policy includes language that would trigger the creating of a rule.
Okay, do you have that?
And that rule that it triggers would implement my model policy.
May I suggest that Board Member Klein sends that to Angie so she can fix it on the screen while we're already into a substitute motion?
Yes.
Thank you.
That's satisfactory. Or she could be doing it while we're.
I mean, I can reword it right now, but I think with the explanation, it should be clear. I mean, the wording's pretty good the way it is, but I just wanted to make sure it was clear what it was.
I think
that my model policy does.
It's either Jeff or Angie's doing some work on it right now.
The board approves Board Member Klein's draft library material and its sensitive materials model policy in anticipation of a state board rule specific to sensitive materials or specific to 53G 10103. Needs a in there, yeah.
Okay, well.
Which shall
okay.
Implement this model policy in compliance with, yes, okay. I think the rest is good.
One more point of clarity, Chair, if I could, just to be brief here. What we're voting, whether Member Klein or my substitute motion, once we vote on either motion, then changes can be made, whether it's to, or amendments can be suggested, whether to Member Klein's motion or mine.
Yeah. That's how I'm seeing it, unless somebody is going to object, because right now your substitute motion is to put the master merge draft model policy on the table, which would take hers off.
Correct.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, so that's where we're at.
I'm sorry, Chair, but that's not what it says on the motions there. It says we approve the master merge draft policy. I think we need to fix that before we vote.
I agree. It's because
give me a friendly
substitute. So the word substitute needs to go in.
Board Member Hymas's isn't on the table yet.
So, but his substitute motion is. So what's a better word than approve?
Substitute? Replaces?
I think it's substitutes.
Well, I wonder if we could just put that the board places the master merge draft policy on the table for consideration or something of that nature.
Yes.
Well, it's by.
Of the other.
That's what she's moving. I think, Scott, that's what she's moving. She wants it approved.
No, I believe that Member Klein's motion is as stated. That's what she desires. I think that's Member Hymas's, which we're voting on now, is different.
And the wording on mine still needs some correcting, but anyway.
Do you have it so you can send it, Member Klein?
Send it, please, to Angie and Jeff.
And
I'm trying.
If it's too messy, Chair, I guess I'm fine voting on the one and then making a motion. I thought that it was appropriate to make a substitute motion, but I still want to have conversations surrounding that because there are some amendments that need to be made.
That's why we're cleaning this up right here now. But I believe that the board substitute for consideration the master merge draft model policy, and it can still be amended.
Okay, then I will sit quietly.
Okay,
while
this
we
is what's in-
I'm happy to just walk through this and we can just
okay, let's walk through
edit it
one more
really quick.
time. Add-
Okay,
Okay, staff,
So-
are you ready? Let's
Quick,
just make sure staff's ready.
emphasis,
okay.
quick.
So my motion is that the board adopt the member Klein sensitive materials model policy in anticipation of a state board rule being created specific to sensitive materials, which shall implement this model policy in
Okay, so
compliance
hang on one
with,
sec.
okay,
Can you see this? Yeah. Can you see the screen?
I can see the screen.
Let's just,
Shall implement this
Don't
model
start
policy in compliance with 53G 10103 and the official Attorney General memorandum that is correct. The rest of it is official Utah or official Attorney General memorandum dash laws surrounding school libraries.
I have one question for staff. This is on the legal side. The remember Klein, it's the, my question of concern, just so we have this right, in managing everyone's expectations, is the official Attorney General memorandum. Is that the correct title?
Chair, no, it is not.
Because
The correct title is Official Memorandum Dash Laws Surrounding School Libraries.
Official
Could I
memorandum
suggest that we
dash
just put
laws
the,
surrounding school libraries.
could I suggest we just put the date there too? It's dated June 1st, and then it will be clear
Yes.
when it came out.
But it incorporates the other by reference anyway, so.
So hang on one sec.
Just the June 1st, 2022 draft or
Just
memorandum.
again, to make this correct, maybe Angie can weigh on this too. There's, when you say that particular memorandum, that is actually that's in addition to a previous. So are they?
No.
Are they separate? No. Are they two? Hang on one sec. I'm asking the question. Angie and to our attorneys, are they two separate, or is one and? Because I read it.
I can read right from it if you'd like.
Well, I'm asking our attorneys and also our policy writers.
Chair, this is Brian Questenberry, if I can respond.
Hey, Brian, I just didn't see your hand for some reason, but go ahead.
Okay, and I believe that this official memorandum adopts and incorporates the earlier May 4th memorandum.
Point of order, I can clarify that with the actual language.
All right, Member Klein.
It says in the introduction paragraph, this memorandum supersedes any prior memorandum or other information previously provided by the Office of the Utah Attorney General on the question of removing pornographic books from school libraries, including laws surrounding school libraries. Any conflict or inconsistency between this document and any prior pronouncement from the AGO should be resolved in favor of the analysis herein. Any relevant part of the May 4th memo not consistent with this document is incorporated by reference.
Okay, because it seems like it referenced the other document too, and so it seems like that other document was somehow attached to this communication. That's why I just want to make sure this is right, entitled right. So
it says it supersedes any previous one.
Okay. So Brian, this is stated correctly?
Yeah.
Brian Quisenberry, AAG?
Yes, sir. I think that is the correct title there in the motion.
Okay, thank you. All right, so I'm not going to come back to this. Member Klein, is this the way that it's on the screen, and this is your motion, correct?
That the board adopts Board Member Klein's draft sensitive materials model policy in anticipation of the state board rule being created specific to sensitive materials, which shall implement this model policy in compliance with section 53G 10103 and the official memorandum laws surrounding school libraries dated June 1st, 2022. Yes, that is correct.
Okay, thank you. All right, now there's a substitute motion on the table. Member Jaimes, did you want to speak more to this because we had it second?
Well, let me just clarify. I've received some feedback from Sybil. She informed me that we can use the wording that is on the original, that the board approves a library materials model policy merged master draft 1 on first and final reading. And then following that, we could make a motion. If that passes, we could make a motion. If not, then we'd be done. But if it passes, we could make a motion to amend and then add any amendments. So my substitute motion is the motion just at the top of the screen. If you want to just copy and paste, that would be it.
Okay, I want to make sure you're, so we've got the first motion. Clarify, I just want to make sure your motion is exactly how you want it.
Mm-hmm.
Substitute motion.
The substitute motion.
Yes, and I'm putting all of my faith into Sybil. Is that?
It's accurate.
We got it. We're good.
Point of order. Just a quick, before we vote on this, then people can make amendments, or do we have to vote on this?
A vote.
You have to vote on this and get it on the table.
Because this is just to get it on the table, not to actually.
That is correct.
Pass the document.
Correct.
Okay.
Okay, I want to make sure, Member Jaimes, that this is your substitute. So you restate your substitute motion, please.
Yes, I move that the board approves the library materials model policy merged master draft 1 on first reading and final reading.
Okay, the second.
Board Member Lear.
Lear, are you still good with the second?
Yes.
Okay, are you going to speak more to the motion, Member Jaimes?
No, thank you.
Okay, Member Earl?
Yeah, I'll be quick.
To the substitute. Thank you.
I'm speaking to the substitute, yeah, or I actually am speaking to Member Klein's draft, and that there's some components of that I think we need to consider, and one of those especially.
Out of order.
Oh, I can't?
Well,
it's the for against, isn't it?
No, you're speaking, what is now to be voted on is the substitute motion. So we're speaking to the substitute motion. You can speak.
So I can't speak of why I would vote no, or?
You would say, hey, I'm against the substitute motion. Whatever you choose, that's what's on the table, not the original.
Yes, okay. I do know that. Okay. So let me ponder that for a minute, see how to frame. Thank you.
Okay, we can come back. Member Straight?
Yes, I would like to speak in favor of the motion on the table. Yes? Yes, to the substitute motion, I'm sorry.
We're speaking to the substitute motion.
Having listened to the Law and Licensing Committee and observed their work, and I believe the substitute motion is ever met in alignment with section, sorry, I got a frog in my throat, that is in compliance with section 53G-10-103, as well as the official memorandum laws surrounding school libraries dated June 1st, 2022. I have heard from several individuals that by voting for this substitute motion, I would not be voting in favor of the law. And I believe that to be untrue. I've listened to the work. I appreciate the work of law and licensing. I approve of the merged aspect of this, that people have come together and we have something to vote on that follows the law as well. Thank you.
And I rely on my vice chairs here, but I believe Member Lear, your hand was next.
I just want to say I support the substitute motion, and I'm assuming that once the substitute motion is on the table, then there can be amendments to Member Hymas's motion. Would that be accurate?
That is correct.
Thank you.
Okay. Member Hanson, I believe, is next.
And my comment right now, I'm in favor of the substitute motion if we're able to proceed with amendments, but I don't read this as being that, and I don't think that I'm sorry to doubt Sybil, but if we approve the library materials model policy master draft 1 on first and final reading, I think we've approved it. I think that we need to make amendments now to this or change the motion to say that it's to be amended or something like that. But this is what we would do as a final motion to approve something and be done. So I hope that we can fix this, parliamentary wise, so that I'm able to do that. And maybe I can have a motion to amend to just tack on to the end of this. I'll make a motion to amend the substitute motion to say that we that we substitute the library materials model policy merge master draft 1 for further discussion by the board.
Another point of order.
Hang on, before we go to that, Sybil, did you have your hand raised?
I think it just doesn't have.
Yes, Chair, thank you. I do apologize. I should not have instructed the first and final reading language. That is when we are reviewing board rules. So Mr. Hymas's motion should have stopped after draft 1. I don't know if that clarifies what Member Hanson is addressing.
But I think its concern is still that the board approves the library materials model policy merge.
Yeah, I believe what we're trying to do, sorry, Chair, is just to substitute, instead of the draft that was proposed, substitute this draft for further discussion or further amendment or consideration, I guess, further consideration.
So let me, and Sybil can correct me on this, but on a substitute, it replaces its position on the table.
Yes.
And then there's more work that happens on the table. So, and I could be wrong with that, or wrong, but I like to be right, but that.
Yeah, I don't doubt that, Mark. The word approve is what I have an issue with. And so maybe that word should just be substitute.
So, but the substitute motion, and I'm calling out a substitute motion to replace the original with it, the board approve. And then it goes to work. So let me, Angie Stallings, your hand is raised. Am I correct or incorrect?
You are correct. Right now, what you'll be voting on is substituting the motion. You're substituting what the underlying motion is. And you'll remember that if, let's say that the board was not going to make any subsequent amendments, after the substitute motions, you would then do a next motion to say, now we want to take action on the current motion, which would then be that the board approves, and you would take final action. So it's a two-step process. The first step is to approve or not the substitute motion, which will then start. The next motion would then either be, I'd like to make a motion to amend, or I'd like to, let's take the final motion. Let's act on this final, motion for final action. I don't know if that makes sense, but I am agreeing with you, Chair Huntsman, that the language should be that the board approves the library materials model policy merged master draft 1. And then if that motion's approved, then somebody, the next motion
Well,
could
hang
be.
on. Let me correct Angie. So the motion is just not a normal motion. It's a substitute motion. So I call out a substitute motion. The substitute motion on the table is that the board approve. Then it puts it in that place. I have to call it a substitute motion.
Correct.
Then it can be amended.
Correct. And so board member Hymus would say, I'd like to make a substitute motion that, and then that's there. So
that's what's on the table right now.
Correct.
And when I call to vote, it'll be voting on the substitute motion that moves it back into that place.
Correct. Not on final passage.
That is correct.
Okay, thank you. I understand. I think that makes sense.
Well, this is good to have these questions where it's all good. It's healthy. Okay. Member Earl, did you find your question from before or concern?
I suppose so. Yeah. So, see, and I'm going to get called order again, but there are components to the previous draft, the board member Klein's draft, that I think are valuable that we need to consider. But I do think that we have the master policy has a number of amendments that I think will create those consistencies. I do think moving forward, we do need to consider that we need a sensitive materials rule. And I know that's being looked at. I think it creates clarity for us. And the sensitive materials model policy is broader than we are able to do at this time. I think we have to have the rule in order to incorporate that. So anyways, those are my comments to this.
The substitute motion. Okay. Member Klein, your hand's raised. Do you have a comment to the substitute motion? Okay. I'm not seeing any hands raised. So the substitute motion is, and prepared, this will be a roll call vote. The substitute motion is that the board approve the library materials model policy merged master draft 1. This will be a roll call vote.
I do have a comment if it's not too late.
Okay.
I'm just looking at the Attorney General memo where it says the board must create model policies consistent with state statutes, including HB 374 for LEAs, and in turn LEAs must follow such policies to comply with the state statutes. So I'm looking at this master merge policy. It starts right off by allowing the districts to create their own policy rather than following the model policy that we create according to the Attorney General's memo.
All right. Okay, now I'm going to call this to a vote. What's before the board is the substitute motion that the board approve the library materials model policy merged master draft 1. Roll call vote. I'll start with Member Straight.
Yes.
Member Norton.
Yes.
Member Moss.
Yes.
Member Lear.
Yes.
Member Hymus.
Yes.
Member Hutchings.
No.
Member Hanson.
Yes.
Member Earl.
No.
Vice Chair Davis.
Yes.
Member Klein.
No.
Member Cannon.
Yes.
Member Booth.
Yes.
Vice Chair Belknap,
Yes.
and Chair Huntsman's a yes. The motion passes. Do you have the votes? Sybil? Did you
Yes,
get
I
voting?
do. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So I've got a tracker sheet here I'm keeping notes on. Okay, so the motion on the before the board is that the board approve the library materials model policy merged master draft 1 and to keep people in the queue for amendments. I've got Hymas. Help me out, Vice Chairs. I've got Hymas,
Board Member Earl, Board Member Moss, and Board Member Lear.
Moss, and Lear.
Yes.
Okay, Member Hymas. And if you guys have anything in writing or whatever you on substitutes, if you can make sure we can present those, that will be handy. So Member Hymas.
Thank you. I'm going to call on Jeff to see if he has something in writing that he can show there, but I'd like to amend line 127 and 128. And so how do you want to go about that? I don't know who's driving, if it's Jeff or Angie, but I'd like to have the lines up before I jump in. 127 and 128. And this is S, right? And I'd like it to read, the review committee will determine whether the material constitutes sensitive material consistent with section 53G-10-103, comma, this policy. And then the additional language would be, and the guidance letters provided by the Attorney General's office dated June 2nd, 2022, and if not contradicting the June 2nd, 2022 guidance, the May 4th, 2022. And additionally with that, I'd like to make a switch with the Appendix C and put the June 2nd document before the May 4th document, because we are prioritizing the June 2nd document takes precedence. So with that, I don't see any action on the screen, but did we get that? Or have I been muted the whole time?
You've been totally muted, but I'll second that.
Okay.
Second.
Okay, let's make sure it's up on the screen.
I believe that looks accurate to me.
A motion and a second discussion to the amendment. Discussion, or do you want to speak to an amendment, Member Hymas?
I do. The June 2nd memo that went out provides much better, much clearer guidance, but it does refer to the May 4th document. And I don't know how much publicly I want to get into this. I'm just not a big fan of the May 4th guidance. I'd like to get rid of it completely, but it does get referenced in the June 2nd document. And so it's probably important to have it in there, or at least access to it. But putting the 9-page June 2nd document first will be important, so that we understand where to look first, as Board Member Klein read earlier, that it does take precedence. And so I want to make sure that that's clear, that is the memo that we start with. And then again, that not only are we looking at 53G-10, which is already on there, and this policy, but use that AG memo as well. So thank you.
Okay. So we have the proposed amendment. We're speaking to the proposed amendment. Member Earl?
Yes, help me if I'm not understanding this. It references that memo, but it references in context in the document itself. In other words, you don't need the other memo in order to pull out the pieces that are needed because they included them in the June 1st memo. So we shouldn't be using the May memo at all. Any incorporations are in the June 1st. Is that, maybe this is more of a point of order, but I think that's what it's very clearly saying in the first area there. We should not be referencing the May at all. It already is referenced. Okay, I'm going around in circles. I'm not trying to, but that's what we should be using. We shouldn't be using the other one. So really, I guess maybe I need to make an amendment to this. Oh, did you get this seconded? Someone seconded it, right?
Oh, we got it. We had it seconded. And we're
okay,
doing discussion to the amendment.
I'd like to make an amendment.
To the amendment.
Yep.
Okay.
And should I keep my amendment? My amendment is to strike letters, strike the S, and to, is it June 1st or June 2nd? I have June 1st on the memo I'm looking at.
June 1st.
It's June 1st.
June 1st, and then strike the rest of that line. And if not contradicted, the June 2nd, 2022 guidance, May 4th, 2022, that needs to be stricken. So striking the S on letters and striking, oh, you've got it there down below, okay. So it's referencing just the one because it references the other in the document, not to go back to the document.
Okay, is there a second to that amendment to the amendment?
A second, although it doesn't look like it's been fixed yet.
I just wanted to make sure there's a second before it gets.
I think it's just listed down below. Is that accurate? Jeff's probably running it. Oh, there we go.
Okay.
And then just the S on letters. Is that stricken already? Maybe, can't tell. Okay. All right, thank you.
Did you want to speak more to your amendment to the amendment?
No, I don't think so. I think it's pretty clear.
Discussion to the amendment. I have I'm showing hands still raised. Member Moss, members Moss, Lear, and Vice Chair Davis. So, speaking to the amendment, Member Moss, or is that something else?
I dropped my hand. Sorry, Chair. I'm in line for another amendment later.
Well, I'll keep you in the queue. Member Lear?
Yeah, I had a friendly amendment, I believe, in saying it's less clunky if it reads determining can you go back to with this policy and the guidance letter provided by Attorney General dated June 1st, 2022. Oh, I see. Oh, never mind. This is stupid. You know what? We're micromanaging the AG's terminology, and the AG is doing its job in incorporating by reference what its own Assistant Attorney General wrote. And so long as it's not inconsistent with the second letter, I think this is overkill in beating up the first letter. And I think our discussion is unnecessary and disrespectful to our own AAG. So I won't make any amendments at this time, but I can make that comment. Thank you.
Okay. Vice Chair Davis? Oh, Brian, hang on. I see our AAG's hands raised. Hang on, Vice Chair Davis.
Well, I was just going to ask him for his opinion. Can the one stand alone without the other? And is that the assumption of the AG's office? If so, great. If not, we probably need them both. It's referenced 12 times in the letter. The first one's referenced 12 times in the second one, so we probably just need to know.
Yeah, and I was going to say that myself, Chair, if I may. Whether you strike this
AAG,
reference.
we have AAG Brian Quisenberry speaking. Go ahead. Go ahead, Brian.
Thank you, sir. Whether you strike this reference, can you hear me okay, Chair?
Yes.
Chair, can you hear me okay? Okay.
Yes.
So whether you strike the reference to the May 4th letter or not, it's still part of the, in my opinion, the June 1st letter. It's referenced 12 separate times in the June 1st letter. In the very last sentence of the first paragraph, it says, any relevant part of the May 4th memo not inconsistent with this document is incorporated by reference. So really, it doesn't matter if we strike this or leave it in. It's the language kind of speaks for itself. And to that sense, and I think Board Member Lear is kind of said it better than I have, that it's, regardless of what we do, it's still part of this June 1st letter.
Okay.
Follow up.
Yes, follow up, Vice Chair Davis.
So, AAG Quisenberry, is this decision substantive or is this decision logistical? So is this just a decision that if we don't put it in at all, will the LEAs have everything they need? Or if we don't put it in, they're going to have to go and find the May 4th letter to do their work? Is it, my question is, are the references inclusive of what's already there so they don't have to go and find it to figure out what, can the June 1st stand alone? Are the references inclusive of what's already there?
Yes, I think the references in the June 1st memo do reference kind of the key parts or some kind of important parts from the May 4th letter. And so, of course, we've emailed it out to everyone. Both of these two documents have been emailed out so they can reference the either one. Of course, if there's a conflict, then we know that the June 1st letter governs. And you asked if it's substantive. Yes, the June 1st memo is definitely substantive. Now, it does not answer every single question. LEAs are going to have to use their own kind of judgment to some extent. But I think that was the intent of the June 1st memo, was not to answer every question.
Okay.
Does that, Vice Chair Davis, is that?
Yeah, follow up, Vice Chair Davis.
I don't know. I just need to know if they can just use one and have it be inclusive or if they have to use both, but we can move on.
Okay. Member Klein?
Yeah, so my comment on the drafts, the reason that it was the May 4th one was referenced so many times in the June 1st memorandum is because the June 1st memorandum was trying to clarify where everywhere that the May 4th one got it wrong. So we need to stick with the June 1st one because that is the one that brings clarity and helps get rid of the confusion that the May 4th one caused.
Okay. Member Hanson.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. So the wording in the June 1st memo says that any relevant part of the May 4th memo not inconsistent with this document is incorporated by reference. That means that anything that hasn't been changed or altered in this document is still valid and should be referred to by the target audience. I believe the proper thing to do here would just be to reference the June 1st memo in the text of the policy and then attach the May 4th memo as a reference behind the June 1st so that people can see that and see the words that are changed in the June 1st or whatever in context and understand what these parts of the May 4th memo that are not inconsistent with the document are incorporated by reference. Incorporated by reference means that it's not all restated. All the relevant parts aren't restated in this. It's anything that's not changed by this is incorporated, and without that text, I think it's incomplete. So I don't know. I think this amendment as it's listed on the screen is fine as long as we just attach the May 4th memo behind the June 1st one so that it's available. Otherwise, people would have to hunt it down and find it to see what's there, because it is explicitly incorporated by reference. So the body of that memo is supposed to be in the June 1st memo. They're supposed to be read together.
Okay. Hands, Klein, your hands still raised? Okay, the proposed amendment.
Wait.
Hang on, Member Straight.
Really quick, is there anything in addition that needs to be done to incorporate what Board Member Hanson just talked about with this motion? Are we ready to move on? Because I support that. There's a motion fine as is.
The way this, for clarity, and I can subject. Well, this is about interpretation of the amendment, and I'll reach to our AAG Brian or Angie that helps us with this policy. Does this proposed amendment delete, I guess, the May 4th AAG's letter? Angie Stallings?
Chair, if I may.
Oh, Brian, sorry.
I think the answer to your question is no, it does not delete or remove or eviscerate the earlier May 4th, even though it's deleted or it's stricken through here in this motion. I think I tend to agree with Board Member Hanson there. It's still out there. It's still referenced, and in fact, by the way, it's positively referenced in the June 1st letter. It's not all just reference to make corrections to the May 4th. For example, on page 4, twice it references, quote, as described in the May 4th memo, and then it goes on to kind of reference the May 4th memo. It does that twice on page 4. So the answer, Chair, to your question is the striking of that language. It does not remove the May 4th memo, I believe.
Okay, thank you. Vice Chair Davis, you're.
Yeah, I'd like to make an amendment to the amendment because I'm fine with taking out the blue that Board Member Earl has, but in order to make it referenced, they're both still in the appendix, but what Member Hymas is suggesting in his amendment is that the most recent guidance be placed above or first the oldest reference. And I think that's consistent with what all these board members actually are saying too, that should be considered first because anything in that space would supersede the other if there's a conflict. So that one should be first in the appendix.
So point of order, there's 2 amendments on the table currently, but I think that's already in the first, Board Member Davis, I think that's already in the first motion, first amendment.
It got crossed out in yours.
So,
well, I wasn't changing that. I was only changing this part.
Then it's an accidental crossing out. Just needs to be fixed.
No.
And to place the June 1st, 2022 AG letter in front of the May 4th letter in the appendix, that got crossed out with yours.
Oh.
With Member Earl's amendment, it was that you wanted that out.
The order.
I see what you're saying. I was thinking for some reason that was rewritten again here instead of there. I didn't see that it was placed there.
So
I do want, well, I guess now I'll have to wait, right? Because I think that's what my intent wasn't to change the end of it. But it would have been to change the placing.
So the driver here, which is Jeff, can you state what the amendment is? Amendment to the amendment?
Yes, I can see what I thought I understood. So Board Member Earl, please correct me if I got too excited about striking through. I apologize, my dog is behind me snoring and I can't do anything about it. The amendment that I understood is you did not want the May 4th memo in the model policy at all. So not as an appendice, just the June 1st letter. And then to make the rest of the technical corrections to the motion above to fit that desire. So there would be no talking of the May 4th memo up here as well. Because if you remove it from the appendices, you would not need to refer to it here.
Okay. I guess the intent was to strike the letters and then the line here. And then I think you're right. Originally that was it, but I think, well, I guess we'll have to.
Well, hang on. Let's just, I want to work with you. I mean, times are in.
Well, I'm good with not striking the placement because it's clear that there's a need for a placement there.
Okay, without objection, who was your second?
I'll second it.
No,
I don't know if we have one already. I'm sorry.
She already
can't
had
remember.
it.
I don't
Member
remember.
Klein was the second.
Okay, without objection, Member Klein? Okay.
Fine.
All right, so we're getting to the point. Vice Chair Davis, your hand is raised. You're good? Okay. So we're at this point. Jeff, will you state the amendment to the amendment? And then we're going to, then just so I make sure I have it right, and then we're going to vote.
Okay, so as I understand it, the amendment then is to not refer to one memo over the other in the actual policy. So the change for lines 127 to 128 in the model, in the merged master policy would be that the review committee will determine whether the materials are consistent, constitute sensitive material consistent with section 53G 10103, this policy, and the guidance letter provided by the AG's office dated June 1st, which does in the letter itself incorporate by reference to May 4th where it's not inconsistent. So just making the strike of the naming of the May 4th letter, but leaving the May 4th letter in the appendices after the June 1st.
So the amendment is from the amendment to the amendment is striking, and if not, get my glasses on, contradicting the June 2nd, 2022 guidance, May 4th, 2022. That is what's being stricken in this amendment. Is that correct?
And the S on letters.
And the S on the letters. Okay, thank you. All right, that's the amendment. That's the amendment to the amendment. The amendment to the original amendment is to strike the S off the letters and strike, and if not, contradicting the June 2nd, 2022 guidance, May 4th, 2022. Okay, we're going to vote on that amendment. So,
Chair,
yes.
I'm sorry, point of order, but we don't have letters stricken in that. The S isn't taken off.
Well, I thought it was for a second.
Is it okay?
Well, I thought I saw it go up into there. Okay. let me just last ask Jeff, did I state the?
It's strict. Yeah, you did it right, Chair, and it is stricken now.
Okay. All right. Do I need to repeat it? Are we ready to vote on the amendment to the amendment?
We are so ready.
All right. This will be a roll call vote to the amendment to the amendment.
Oh, wait.
What was that?
Never mind.
All right. I'm going to call out the roll call vote. Member Straight. The amendment.
Yes.
Okay. Member Norton.
Yes.
Member Moss.
Yes.
Member Lear.
No.
Member Hymas.
Yes.
Member Hutchings.
Yes.
Member Hanson.
Yes.
Member Earl.
Yes.
Vice Chair Davis.
Yes.
Member Klein.
Yes.
Member Cannon.
Yes.
Member Booth.
Yes.
Member Belknap. Or Vice
Yes.
Chair Belknap.
Yes.
The motion passes with the one no vote. Is that what you have, Sybil?
Yes, Chair.
Okay. All right. We have the amended amendment. Okay. In the queue was next was Member Moss.
I think we need to vote on this amendment from Board Member.
I don't
Klein.
know if it's being amended or again, so that's what I was wanting to find out.
Well, did we already approve this amendment?
No, I see what he's doing, Jenny. I think he's
Oh.
just seeing if anyone else wants to change this at all.
Oh, sorry.
We have an amendment here. I'm just seeing if there's any other amendments to this amendment.
I don't see any hands,
I
Chair.
don't see any. Okay, so the amended amendment is before us is to amend lines 127 through 126 to read. The review committee will determine whether the material constitutes sensitive materials consistent with section 53G-10-103, this policy, and the guidance letters provided by the Attorney General's office dated, or letter, excuse me, provided by the, is that to be fixed? Jeff, with that S being missing off the letters?
It's crossed out letter.
Wow, you guys have got good eyes. Thank you. That the guidance letter provided by the Attorney General's office dated June 1st, 2022.
And?
Yeah,
and to place the June 1st, 2022 AG's letter in front of the May 4th, 2022 letter in the appendices. That is the amended amendment. Member Klein, your hand is raised.
Yes, I'd just like to make another amendment to the motion.
Okay.
And that would be to strike those last two, the last line.
And to place?
Yes, and then to remove the May 4th memo from the policy, the model policy.
So do you have that, Jeff? Okay. Is there a second? The amendment is your amendment to the amendment does not have a second. Okay, Vice Chair Davis.
It's just, I think it should be in the appendix. Appendices are individual, but maybe I'm
Well,
wrong.
we don't have an amend. We don't have an amend. We don't. Member Klein's amendment then get a second.
It's just going to go out to the public and there's an error. That's all.
Without, Chair, so without objection, can we have someone look at that, if it should be appendix or appendices? Just the word.
Okay, our policy writer.
Yeah, can we work on that? Just make sure it's grammatically correct.
Currently, you have each letter in its own appendices, so it would be Appendix C and then Appendix D. So it would be appendices plural, unless you wanted them to be all part of one appendix.
No, thank you, Jeff.
Okay.
I thought it was all one appendix, so I stand corrected.
Okay, well.
I think it should be one appendix. I don't know if we're offering opinion here, but it should be one appendix because it's saying one thing, right? They stand together.
But it's among many other appendices. That's the point. That's how I read it.
Well, do they both fall into Appendix C, Carol? Is that what you're thinking?
But there's not only these two appendices. There are others, including forms and.
Right.
And
I withdraw I just consider it an appendix.
Thank you, Vice Chair Davis. Thank you. So we have an amended motion on the table. Let's vote on it. Is that correct? That's where we're at? I'm tracking this.
Yes.
So we have an amended motion.
An amended amendment.
Well, it's still in it. Yeah.
Yes.
It's an the amended motion is, so I restate the whole, is to amend lines 127-126 to read.
28.
Yeah, did I miss it? What's that?
127 through 128.
What am I reading wrong? Thanks. I'm doing better with my glasses on, I guess.
I think you already read it.
So, oh, you know what? We're to the, we have voted on the amendment to the amendment, and now we have to vote on the amended amendment. Is that correct?
Correct.
So the amended amendment reads what we just voted on, by the way. So we have to do this again. That's if I'm following my checklist. And that is to amend lines 127 through 128 to read, the review committee will determine whether the material constitutes sensitive materials consistent with section 53G-10-103, comma, this policy, comma, and the guidance letter provided by the Attorney General's office dated June 1st, 2022, and to place the June 1st, 2022 AG's letter in front of the May 4th, 2022 letter in the appendices. That is the amended amendment. And that is what we are to vote on. So board members at this time. Oh, no, I can't do that anymore. It's a roll call vote. Okay, Member Straight.
Yes.
Member Norton.
Yes.
Member Moss. Member Moss. Member Lear.
Yes.
Member Hymas.
Yes.
Member Hutchings.
Yes.
Member Hanson.
Yes, please.
Member Earl,
Yes.
Vice Chair Davis,
Yes.
Member Klein, and I'm sorry, I wasn't,
Was that a yes, Natalie?
I found, I can't hear.
Sorry. This is a hard one because I don't, it's better to have the other one first, but so I'm just going to abstain. I can't vote to have, if it makes it include.
Okay. Member Cannon,
I'm voting yes, but parliamentary wise, I think that we voted on this amendment, and now this amendment would be part of the motion, which is now officially amended.
so
But I'll just vote yes, and you go ahead.
all right, Member Booth,
Yes.
Vice Chair Belknap.
Yes.
Okay, the motion passes. I think we've lost Member Moss, so we don't have Moss and Hart with Member Klein abstaining. My tracker says that now we have that we should be going back to our amended or back to our motion. Is that
Wait.
correct?
No.
So,
Point of order, Chair.
yes,
Are we going to vote on this and then keep making amendments? Is that the approach?
that is correct.
Okay.
So
I didn't want to lose the chance to make further amendments.
that is correct. So now I'm bringing us all back to that substitute motion, which is now the motion on the table that's been amended with amended amendments. Okay,
So it's now time for more amendments, right?
Well, who's on your list, Chair? They were
so
waiting.
and the queue was Moss and then Lear. So is Member Moss with us?
I was on there too.
I think Earl's on there too, Chair.
Yeah.
Add me as well.
I'll just get doing the first two. So
If Jim's not on, I can make the same amendment.
okay, I think we've lost him to whatever's happening in Wyoming. Okay, Member Lear.
Okay, I'd like to move my amendments that were submitted days ago, and they are in Civic Clerk, and there will be some amendments to those amendments which were coming from Member Moss if he's online, or Member Hymas also has those.
Okay, well, what's relevant right now is
amendments.
Member Lear, is this is your opportunity to move your
Okay, I move my
proposed
amendments that are
amendment.
online.
And if you pre-greased with staff, they'll know what it is.
Okay. There at the end. Perfect. Those are the amendments I move, and then I'd like to speak to them briefly.
Okay, so your amendment is in blue and striking what's in red, correct?
Yes, sir. Yes.
Okay. And is there I
second the amendment.
We have a second. Member Booth. Member Laird, do you want to speak to your amendment?
I would. I resisted a USBE appeal under this policy, but then was persuaded by a number of people, including some legislators, Member Davis spoke to, that they would like, of course, to see an appeal to the USBE, but also Member Moss, as well as a couple of those legislators, suggested that it could be a very narrow appeal, which would be a procedural appeal, and I would have left that procedural decision to the USBE to decide what is procedural as a legal matter, but was persuaded for a slightly different direction, preparing for some amendments, which I also support.
Okay. So this is speaking to this to Member Lear's proposed amendment. Member Hanson, are you in the queue or are you speaking to this?
No, I'm in the queue for some other amendments. I do agree with this. I do agree with this amendment. I think that it should be a procedural review and not a rehashing of the review of the materials.
Okay. All right. Member Klein?
Yes.
Okay. Member Moss, your hand's raised. Maybe, are you with us?
Yeah, thank you. I have an amendment to the amendment, which I believe is a friendly, and Jeff has the language.
Okay. Has it been previously submitted or are you?
It was submitted to Jeff. It was not on Civic Clerk, but it was emailed to Jeff earlier today.
Okay, your amendment to the amendment is to amend section 7A3 to read if the USBE determines, and this is, well, Jeff, why don't you explain it? Because I was down on the lower one.
Yes, sorry to make this look a little confusing. So what you have above in the first 3 paragraphs are kind of outlined board member Lear's broken out edits. Below on the indented part that's highlighted in red on your screen is the 2 areas where board member Moss would like to amend her amendments. I just broke those out to make them easier to read and follow each individual one. So you can see that the first one corresponds to the second paragraph of Carol's or board member Lear's. And this second one here corresponds to the third change that board member Lear made. So this first paragraph of board member Lear's is not being amended by board member Moss. If that is clear as mud.
And I'll second that if nobody has.
Okay, I'm just wanting to get it before the board, so we have an amendment to the amendment with a second. And member Moss, you want to speak to your amendment to the amendment?
No, I think this just clarifies the nature of the appeal and the potential action that would be sent back for them to essentially redo it in compliance with their policy. So as member Lear indicated, we had discussed, and I appreciate the second.
Okay. Member Earl, speaking to the amendment to the amendment.
Yes, I am. I just wondered if it needs to say sensitive materials instead of just materials. Because otherwise it's the materials review policy. Would it need to articulate sensitive? I guess it's a question maybe for the group in general.
This is...
Member Lear?
Yeah, I'll speak to that. Maybe Jim's in range too, but I actually think that the appropriate name of the policy should be Library Materials Review Policy, consistent with Section 53-10-103, because to call it a sensitive materials policy assumes the term of art will apply, and it won't necessarily.
I would accept it.
So I would
I think
say Library Materials Review Policy, if that works for you, Jenny.
Except for it all centers around the sensitive materials. That's what is actually law.
I've given up that fight, but it assumes that it is a sensitive material if you write it that way, which is not necessarily going to be found.
And maybe we want it broader. When you say materials review policy, it's a very broad.
Well, library material, that's why you need to narrow it to say something like library materials review policy consistent with 53G-10-103, so that it isn't about guns and violence and all the things that
I'm fine as long as you reference the law. I'm good with that. Yep.
Great. Jeff, do you mind doing it that way? And
I agree with that as well.
Okay, so I think we're good to move on this. Okay, Vice Chair Davis.
Since Carol seconded the amendment to the amendment and they both agree, would it be appropriate to have her accept this as friendly so we only have to vote once and save some time?
Yes. It's very friendly.
I'm not seeing any objections.
I like that it supports local board control. Autonomy at the lowest level.
So we have an amendment, and I have it labeled Lear because she's made it. So any discussion to the amendment? Board Member Hanson, is your hand in the queue?
Yes, in the queue. Would you like me to drop it? If you've got me listed, I can drop the hand.
Okay. Yep, I've got them listed.
I have you listed. Jim, Member Moss, are you
sorry? I'll drop it. That works for me as well. Thank you.
Okay. Member Klein.
Yes, I would just make an amendment to that to add, and maybe it's a friendly amendment, to add and consistent with, so policy consistent with section 53G-10-103 and the official memorandum, or the official Attorney General memorandum that we mentioned earlier. Official memorandum dash laws surrounding school libraries.
I would resist that because there's a lot of other stuff in that memorandum that has nothing to do with this very specific issue. And I think this is a very specific issue that is being addressed. And I don't want to keep dragging that memorandum in.
The memorandum is very specific about following the policies also.
But not to the appeal.
Okay, so do you want to make an amendment to have the memorandum added?
Yes.
The same language as what we referenced before?
That is correct.
Is there a second?
I'll second it, Board Member Earl.
And Member Klein, you kind of spoke to it. Did you want to speak more to it?
No, that's okay.
Okay, we have a Vice Chair Davis.
The only reason that I'm not going to vote for this amendment is because this is specific to a review of the procedure that the LEA has to write out what their steps are, and we have to find out if they follow their procedure correctly. So this is a different space. And the reason that the law is quoted up in the one space is because of the name of the whole material review is in question, not because this review goes back to that, but because it's trying to clarify the name.
Okay. I'm not seeing any other. Member Klein, your hand's still raised, but I want to call this your amendment to the amendment. I want to make a vote on it. Okay. So the amendment is what's in green there, which would add in two different places, and in the original motion, under section 7A1 and section 7A3 to add at the end of the paragraph, and the official memorandum, laws surrounding school libraries dated June 1st, 2022 on both of those. So that is what we're voting on, to have that added. Yes or no, and motion is to have it added. So there's a roll call vote on the amendment to the amendment. Member Straight.
No.
Member Norton.
No.
Member Moss.
No, sorry, no.
Okay, Member Lear.
No.
Member Hymas.
No.
Member Hutchings.
No.
Member Hanson.
No.
Member Earl.
Yes.
Vice Chair Davis.
No.
Member Klein.
Yes.
Member Cannon.
No.
Member Booth.
No.
Member Booth.
No.
Thank you. Vice Chair.
No.
Okay, the motion, the amendment to the amendment did not pass. Did you get the 2 yes votes?
Yes, I did, Chair.
Okay, thank you. We're back to the amendment. Not seeing any hands raised. The amendment before the board, or to the substitute motion that has been amended. And this is everything in blue and red is added. Is that correct? Okay. So I'm just going to restate for clarity how that will read, okay? And tell me if I'm wrong, Jeff.
Wait, oh, I think we do have a, sorry, I'm trying to raise my hand. Chair?
Yes.
Oh, I think Jim can maybe speak to this because it's a combined amendment, but I don't want any misunderstanding that the LAA correctly followed its library materials review policy and consistent with 53J could bring into question whether the policy followed this section. I anticipated putting this section to modify library materials review policy so we would know which library materials review policy was being discussed. I don't know if you see the difference I'm raising.
I'm not, but I'm going to go to Vice Chair Davis.
You could just change it, referred to in section 53D, just.
Yes, yes, thank you. Yes, thank you, that does it. My brain was getting, even my English teacher brain is getting numb. Thank you. That reflects my addition of that, so that the law will not be reviewed by the board. It will be the procedure that the LAA put in place in its policy. Thank you.
So with those changes, who is your second?
My initial second, I don't remember.
Might have been me.
Booth.
Randy.
Member Booth is what I have down.
Now Jim may have to.
That's great.
Jim's got his hand up though. Maybe he has other.
I'm fine with this, Chair.
Great.
Okay, so we still have some hands raised. I'm not sure if it's getting in the queue or or back to this amendment. So I'll call out Jim or Member Moss, your hand is raised to this amendment.
Sorry, I'll drop.
He spoke.
Okay, I still have you in the queue, but
No, he's
okay.
gone.
Member Earl.
Okay, I'm just trying to think through this. So does 53G 10-103, I'm just trying to think how it refers to a library material. So it's actually not, we don't care if the district, right?
No, I'm sorry, but can I interject what that probably should mean? It should probably refer to R277-328, where the model policy is actually identified. It's not identified in 53G-10-103.
Did you mean 320 or 628, not 328?
Whichever one, I'm getting them all, I always get them confused. 628, thank you, Jeff. I did mean 628, where the actual policy is required. Thank you. Thank you, Jenny.
Okay. Member Klein, Member Earl, your hand's raised.
Yeah, I'm just thinking through this now.
All right.
For a minute.
Okay. Member Klein.
Okay, I feel like if we're doing a repeal at the USBE, it should be more comprehensive than that. Not just to see if the district is following its own library model policy or its own library policy, but also if their library policy is consistent with the law. I think that would be something that if we're not doing, if we don't take appeals for that, then perhaps we should be auditing for that to make sure that local district policies are in line with the law, because that's the most important part about this entire thing, is making sure that LEAs are that their policies are consistent with the law. If all we're doing is checking to see if they're following their policy and their policy is not consistent with the law, then we haven't done anybody any favors.
Vice Chair Davis.
I think every policy that the LEAs have in every space has to be consistent with the law, whether we put it here or not. What this is referring to is where we are going to go in this particular review committee. So, there are a lot of other compliance issues out there, but this one is just looking at the process. And the board members that we talked to did not want to start, reading books, getting into all of that space. So, and also we talked about this a lot, actually, and kind of went back and forth. And, it's not also that it couldn't be added later if it looked like there was a need, if those reviews you're talking about, board member Klein, prove problematic in the future or something.
May I follow up?
You can. We're getting into the operations and not into we're kind of in the space of what's in this amendment, but
I think it speaks to the amendment and whether it is
enough or not,
appropriate or not. The whole reason that we are in this space at all is because districts have not been in compliance with the law. Many have been not able to understand the law, or they have intentionally tried to circumvent the law. I'm not saying which it is for any specific district, but we've had incredible number of complaints. I mean, we've had upwards of 400 emails since last night of parents concerned about this issue, that they haven't been listened to, that the law isn't being followed. And so if anything, that would be the most important part, because that is our job as the board, to have general supervision and control, meaning we make sure that districts are in compliance with the law. And if that's not what we're checking for or ensuring or putting something into place to make sure that's happening, then I don't know what we're even doing here, quite frankly. I don't know how better to say it.
Member Lear, your hand still raised?
Yes, it is. And I just would like to respond briefly that I intentionally wanted to, my amendment, and I accepted Jim's amendment, which actually narrowed it more because this is now a remand to the district to do it, or the LEA. And let's be really clear. We're not just talking about districts. We're talking about LEAs, of which there are 160-ish. And the procedural review is necessary and appropriate, but whether they follow the law is not a job for, it's for the job for the courts, not for a board of lay people who are not trained in the law. And that's why districts and charter schools can sue and be sued. And that's where that appropriate review would take place, not by the board. We have other things to do. I intentionally wanted it very narrow. And I think that this is an important aspect in clarifying it and making sure that the LEAs are told to follow your policies.
Member Moss, your hand's raised, or is that to be in the queue, or are you commenting on this amendment?
Yeah, I'll comment briefly. What's on the screen reflects my intentions, and there may be, other proposals for different ways of dealing with legal issues, but this, I think, was captured the intent of this procedural review opportunity with remand.
Okay. So this is what's before. The amendment that's the amendment to the amended substitute motion is before us, and it's in the blue.
And remember, it's friendly, so we just can vote once.
That is correct. So it's just an amendment to the amended, that's what I was stating. So this is once, and then it goes back to the amended. It becomes part of the amended substitute motion. And I just want to remind you, we've got, what, 23 minutes still? So I'll just state what it is. To amend line 205 to read the requested in B period A may petition the USBE for a procedural review of the appeals committee's decision to amend section, B2A1 to read, the USBE will review the petition and will determine if a procedural review is warranted, to determine whether the LEA correctly followed its library materials review policy referred to in Rule R277-628. To amend section 7A3 to read, if the USBE determines in USBE's procedural review that the LEA did not correctly follow its material review policy, it will return the appeal to the LEA with direction to repeat its review process in compliance with its library materials review policy referred to in Rule R277-628. That is the proposed amendment that goes back to the amended substitute motion. This will be a roll call vote to this amendment. Member Straight?
Yes.
Member Norton?
Yes.
Member Moss?
Yes.
Member Lear?
Yes.
Member Hymas?
Yes.
Member Hutchings?
Yes.
Member Hanson?
Yes.
Member Earl?
Yes.
Vice Chair Davis?
Yes.
Member Klein?
No.
Member Cannon?
Yes.
Member Booth?
Yes.
Vice Chair Belknap?
Yes.
Okay, the motion passes. It has one no vote. Member Klein.
Point of order, Chair.
Yes.
I think on the motion where we amended, we're missing the requester in, it should be section BA.
Yep.
It's just a clerical kind of fix, but I think that should be changed as we amend this.
Okay, without objection to that, to what Member Hanson called out, can we leave that in the motion?
I believe that that's something that staff could actually clean up afterwards. We have a couple of places in the rule where we reference a section without stating section.
Okay. All right. I want to get to the people that are in the queue. Member Hanson, I'm not sure if
I think you skipped Jenny, Chair.
Oh,
I have Jim,
thank you,
and he
Earl.
went, then Jenny, Scott, Natalie, Matt, and then Vice Chair
Hold
Davis,
it.
if she's still in there.
So tell me again.
So we've got Jenny and then Scott.
Okay, I apologize. Okay, Member Earl, and then
Yes, motion
Member
number.
Hanson,
Yep.
and then I didn't know if Jim was trying to. So, okay, let's.
So motion number 1, I think they've got it. Jeff's got it, or Angie. So motion number 1, it just seems to be duplicitous, and we're putting it here in one section. We don't have it in others, and I would just leave and represent varying viewpoints instead of, oh, you did put a comment there. Okay, I was wondering what that was before. So perspectives, diverse ethnicities, cultural backgrounds, those are various viewpoints. And up earlier where
So Jenny, what's your motion here?
That's my motion.
To remove those words.
Perspectives, diverse ethnicities and cultural backgrounds into, okay, yep, if there's a second for that.
So do you want to do one at a time, or are you going to try to do them all in one?
Well, if I did them all, I'm not sure all of them would pass. So I'm
How
not
many
sure.
are there?
All right, let's go.
How many are there?
I think there's 5.
Got 23 minutes, 21 minutes.
There's
I
7.
know. We spent
How many is there?
A couple.
7.
7? There's
Correct.
7.
I'll second it.
Okay, speak to them, or did you already?
Yeah, I'll quickly speak to it. We list a whole bunch of things up here in the selection of materials, and those are referenced at 2D. And then we're adding new things down here in this section. I just think, and representing various viewpoints hits those key things. So unless anybody else has a comment, we can vote.
We have a motion to amend with a second. Are you going to speak? Your hand's raised, Natalie Klein. Member Klein. Oh,
I have you in queue, Natalie.
Thank you.
I have it. Yeah, I have it in queue. I have her in queue too. Okay, I'm not seeing any discussion to the motion. The amendment is to delete from 56-A, which is in red, perspectives, diverse ethnicities, and cultural background. This will be a roll call vote for this amendment. We'll start with Member Straight.
Yes.
Member Norton.
Yes.
Member Moss.
Yes.
Member Lear.
No.
Member Hymas.
Yes.
Member Hutchings.
Yes.
Member Hanson.
No.
Member Earl.
Yes.
Vice Chair Davis.
Gosh, I could do either. No.
Member Klein.
Yes.
Member Cannon.
No.
Member Booth.
Yes.
Vice Chair Belknap.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Okay. Next motion, motion 2, in lines, it's using the language from the AG's report versus we had on here, consider all elements. It's listed the way they have it in the document. So as pornographic or indecent materials, any material defined as harmful to minors in section 76-10-1201, described as pornographic in section 76-10-1203, or described in section 76-10-1227 under House Bill 374. If a library book meets the definition of any of these 3 standards, then the book should be removed from a school library. Sorry, I don't know what's missing there. Oh, there we go. Removed from a school library, or, and then it has the next piece underneath. So this is directly from, the other one makes it look like you have to consider all of those elements before it can be removed. Okay, I won't speak to it. That's it.
Okay. Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay. You want to speak more to it?
No, it just, any one of those can trigger independently. This is the direct language from the AG's report.
Okay, I do have one question, and this would be for our AAGs. With the way this is described, if code changes, if something new happens this next session, then we'll be bringing all this back to amend. I guess is, Angie, can you speak to my concern?
Well, I apologize. I rose my hand for a different purpose, but I actually think that or, Board Member Earl, after the semicolon should be and, in order to be consistent with the AG's June 1st memo, as opposed to the or, and I just caught that.
Okay.
Okay, without any objection. And
yeah, that would be fine.
That's good. Let's put the and in.
Chair, could you ask your question again, and I could see if I can.
I'm just wondering if, is this limiting us? Limiting anything future that might?
Well, even, sorry, I don't know if I can.
Is it all inclusive to maybe even future changes? That's my question.
And are you asking me, Chair?
Yes.
So I think in general, it's fairly similar. The language that Board Member Earl is proposing is fairly similar. Although I would say that the AG's memo kind of described the 3 and said you could do 1, 2, or 3. And this is where it gets a little complex. And I also hate to speak for the AGs since, you know, their memos stand for themselves. But essentially, the AG's memo said you could use the test under 1201 or the test under 1203 or the test under 1227. But if you do 1227, in order to avoid constitutional, federal constitutional concerns, you'd also want to look at it taken as a whole, because 1201, 1203 both have taken as a whole included in them, but 1227 didn't. And that's why right after that and, that's in blue, where you can see the next portion of T, so T2 says and I'm trying to get to the language real quick, and this is what 2 says, whether the material is age appropriate due to vulgarity or violence, and then U talks about taken as a whole. So I guess now that I restate it, the second phrase where Board Member Earl has under HB 374, if a school library book meets the definition of any of these 3 standards, then the book should be removed. I would say that yes, and also the taken as a whole, as long. So I think it's okay in the sense that as you go down, the next prong says also to look in you, look at it as taken as a whole. And I apologize if that is confusing. I do wonder, Board Member Earl, if you, instead of saying under HB 374, if instead we want to say under section 76-10-1220, or no, 53G-103, and replace under HB 374 with the 53G reference.
I think that would be appropriate. Yeah.
otherwise, I think it's good.
But
That's operation. Okay.
I'm sorry, but Angie, I just want to clarify. You said before, I'm hearing two different things. You said the taken as a whole is not added in here as it should be, or you're saying it's good, which is true.
And I apologize. I feel like the taken as the whole is in you. So we're talking about T. I think in some ways, this under section 53G-10-103, if the school library meets the definition of any of these three standards, then the book should be removed from a school library. But it also has to be and you. So personally, I probably would just stick with what was there from as pornographic or indecent to 1227, then semicolon, because you requires a taken as the whole. But
thank you. That was a clarification I was looking for. Thank you.
And Vice Chair Davis.
I think this is such a tricky space for our LEAs because we have three pieces of code, that state code, that are conflicting. One has the three prongs and one doesn't. But as I've talked to legislators, it's hard to guess intent, but I really feel like this is written in the AG guidance. And the tricky part of the AG guidance is it says the book should be removed from the school library, and it doesn't say after then do these considerations. Well, it says, and as it's being done, review for the taken as a whole. So I think we have really put a nice balance into this policy. I think that I can support this. We've put a procedure in place where the book that's challenged, it's not totally removed, it's not totally retained, it's put in a restricted section as the review is happening to determine these things that are listed here. And that involves T and U and all the others. So I think we're good.
So you're saying you like it or you don't?
I'm saying I can vote for this, yeah.
And,
I think it leans toward where in these particular very specific cases, we need to lean, for kids.
Deputy Superintendent Stallings, your hand still raised?
yes, I wonder if and I apologize that we're having to do this in a public way. I wish I could have talked to Board Member Earl, before I didn't catch this earlier, but what if it said under section 53G10-103 and subject to subsection U, and you don't need to write it yet, Jeff, because because I think this is where it depends on where you want to go as far as risk. When you're, I thought, this is my interpretation of the AG's June 1st memo, that it stated, yes, you can look at either 1201, 1203, or 1227, which is essentially 103, 53G10-103. But if you use that standard in 53G10-103 in order to avoid constitutional complaints or problems, you'll also want to look at the work taken as a whole, which is what is in you, which is similar to what Washington County School District did. They said you can look at any of either 1201, 1203, or 1227, but if you do 1227 or 53G10-103, you'll also want to look at it taken as a whole. And I don't know if Board Member Earl, agrees with me, but.
Well, from what I understand, the intent is to strengthen your argument. It wasn't necessary, but from what I read, is that it would strengthen a constitutional argument. Is that accurate? It would strengthen the LEA's defense. If yes, or defense. Were violating their free speech, correct. So the way it's written right here, without a reference to you, we're pushing, and again, this is Angie. But you is referenced because we do have you attached to it. So
it's not before the statement that it's must be removed. The U should be before that must be removed.
Or included. And that's why I said maybe you say under section blah, the 53G1, and subject to subsection U, because the way the statement is written right there, it makes it sound like it's just the one thing and you don't need to worry about the taken as a whole. That's it.
Yeah.
I agree.
I see what you're saying.
So I'm going to do a fast recap because we've got 5 minutes. So right now, Member Earl, you have, well, I'm just trying to scope. I guess we can get, let's get through this because it's on the table. Before I take something else, I want to inventory how many proposed amendments do we have out of this body of 14 people? And I'm going to assess whether we're going to have another meeting because we've had this guidance document for 3 weeks.
These amendments could have come in.
What's that?
These amendments could have come in so we could have weighed them. The AAGs could have weighed in. I'm really frustrated.
I know, but I'm just saying if so I just want to manage everyone's expectations here.
I would have 3 more amendments. 2 of them could be combined.
But let me finish this one up, and then before I accept another one, I'm gonna take inventory of how many proposed amendments different board members have. So, discussion to this proposed amendment. Vice Chair Davis, your hand's raised.
I just think it's probably a good compromise. Sounds like Board Member Earl doesn't want to put in as subject to you, but putting in the word and connects it to you anyway. So it seems like we are covering the LEAs with that constitutional piece from the AG guidance with the and added back in there.
Okay.
Enough at least.
Member Klein.
From my recollection of the very arguments that Representative Ivory made, the whole point of him running HB 374 was to create a bright line to avoid the mess that we get into when everything has to be taken as a whole. The 3 items under 1227 are mutually exclusive. Any one of them can trigger a removal of the book without having to take it and look at it as a whole. So I think the recommendations that have been said around this, not Jenny's, not her amendment specifically, but the comments that have been made in my mind is an attempt to undo the very purpose of HB 374.
Member Lear.
I will not argue what it was intended. The bill, we know what bill passed. So it doesn't really matter what the sponsor intended at this point, legally. I think without putting the U before the book should be removed, you mislead those reading this policy. And I don't like that. And one of the reasons that when initially Member Hymas and Member Davis and myself read this, our intent was to keep this lean. So LEAs could determine how much liability they wanted to take. And giving them this additional information, I think, confuses because we're not giving all the nuances that are included in the full AG opinion and in the full body of the law. And not to be too contrary, but Member Klein, this is not a bright line test. There is not a bright line test for this. Attorneys have been arguing, courts have been arguing about this for 30 years, and this is not going to stop. So that means there's not a bright line test. So we're not going to certainly, these board members are not going to come up with that. I would either request that we added the U in before then the book should be removed, or we say this is not accurate because it puts the cart before the horse, I believe, legally.
Okay, those are let me get these other opinions to the motion here. So let's get into debate of what things to me to this amendment. Member Hanson?
Thanks, Chair. Just two sections from the AG's memo. It says that LEAs can further mitigate risk regarding the removal decisions by engaging in analysis as to any overall value the materials may have that might forestall removal. Undertaking such an analysis in good faith significantly increases the likelihood of overcoming a legal challenge to the removal of the book. And then, for example, removing a school library book because it contains a sole description or depiction of an act of sexual intercourse or fondling or other forbidden depiction specified under Section 1227 may be subject to increased risk of legal challenge if the book would not otherwise be removed under Sections 1201, 1203, or 1227-4 when taken as a whole. I think we need to make the LEAs aware of that. It needs to be in there. They can choose if they want to do some kind of a bright line thing, but I read the AG's memo as saying, hey, you can do this, but you're going to get sued, and here's the way to prevent getting sued. And I would like to prevent getting sued as much as we can while still protecting our students. So it's asking for the LEA's committee to engage in a thoughtful review of the book and not just seize on one word or one paragraph that says that there was sexual intercourse between the characters in the book and then throw the book out. I think that's not the intent of the AG's memo as I read it.
Okay. Hang on. Okay, Member Straight.
I agree with Board Member Hanson, but I believe by bringing this up, I don't think we're anywhere close to taking a vote on this. So I'd say we end the meeting on this and come back to it in another meeting.
Member Straight.
Is that a motion?
You can make a motion to postpone or table.
I move that we postpone the table. This amendment. And schedule a meeting where it'll be the first thing on the agenda.
Okay, is there a second?
Second, and could I request that people provide their amendments in advance? I don't see any reason to not do that. I'm really frustrated with that. It's a waste of everyone's important time.
Chair, may I reiterate the motion on the floor is to postpone?
Yes.
Or is it to adjourn?
Well, it'll be postponed and then
we have another item.
And then it'll be to postpone and then it goes to executive committee.
Right.
Next, but then we'll address that next. So
thank you.
So the motion is postponed. We have a second. I'm going to do a roll call vote. Member Straight?
Yes.
Member Norton?
Yes.
Member Moss? Did we lose them?
We may have.
Sorry. Okay, Member Lear?
Yes.
Member Hymas?
Yes.
Member Hutchings?
Yes.
Member Hanson?
Yes.
Member Earl?
No.
Vice Chair Davis?
No.
Member Klein?
No.
Member Cannon?
Yes.
Member Booth?
Yes.
Vice Chair Belknap?
Yes.
Okay, the motion passes. Okay, before I move to the next item, this is an FYI, we'll schedule another meeting. We'll prop up another probably 3 hours or so, but it'd be really nice because we have a motion on the table. We know what's on the table, that we can have those motions prepared a little bit in advance. And I would invite you to work with staff make sure that it meets the intent of your heart and what you're passionate about. And I think this next round, I think we will be able to finish this particular item. So thank you for your work. The next on the agenda is executive session, where we don't have anything in litigation right now. And so this meeting will be, doesn't take a motion, but this meeting will be adjourned. Please be mindful of Civil's next communications, because it'll be setting a schedule. We'll be trying to set a schedule for an additional board meeting right away. Vice Chair Davis.
Sorry.
Okay, I thought it just flashed before me. I want to thank the staff and the public. We're making headway on this motion, so we'll get ready for another round. Appreciate everyone's work and effort. Please take care and be safe, and happy 4th of July, because I don't think we're going to meet before the 4th of July. So thank you. This meeting is adjourned.
Thanks, Chair.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Happy 4th.
Recording stopped.